Well, hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I hope you are all having. Oh, not Tuesday. It's not Tuesday at all. What day is it? Wednesday. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. I hope you're all having a great day. I'm sorry to be a couple minutes late. Clearly, I don't even know what day it is. I can't possibly expect it to know what time it is. But guys, welcome to the stream. Today, we are going to be continuing some work we started on Wednesday with the Austin, Texas Independent School District. Now, besides me yelling at a person who is being distracting in the chat on Monday, we'll forget about that. We'll put that behind us. That person has been blocked, never to be heard from again. We actually did some important stuff on our stream on Monday, in that we sussed out that, well, first, the Austin Independent School District does have an equity office. They do have equity initiatives. They have a whole equity department. But we started going down a different rabbit hole with Austin. And where we ended up is looking into their community partnerships. And one of the things that we're finding with school districts when we're doing these sorts of investigations is that looking into their community partners is actually critical, because the community partners are who they're bringing into the school. The community partners are the ones doing training with staff. The community partners are where they're taking students on field trips. The community partners are involved in different aspects that will affect your children's lives. And so we started looking into the community partnerships that the Austin, Texas Independent School District has. And I'm just going to scroll down. Actually, let me just make this a little bit bigger. And we focused in on one specific. Now they've got all sorts of stuff. They do. But one in particular kind of stood out. And that is under the LGBTQIA plus community organizations. It is an organization called Out Youth. Now, as you know, I don't care if someone's gay. I don't care if they're trans. I don't even care if teenagers or younger in school are coming out as trans. Some people have an issue with me saying that, but I don't care. I don't care if they cut their hair. I don't care if they wear baggy clothes. I don't care if they change their name. I don't care about any of that. I start to have a little bit of an issue when medicalization becomes involved under the age of 18, simply because our brain does not fully develop until we are in our early to mid 20s, and the logic, reason, function of our brain is the last thing to develop. And so I just don't think it's a good idea for kids to be making permanent decisions, or potentially permanent decisions, about their bodies until, they hit a certain age. That's just me. But personally, I don't care if someone's trans. I don't care if they're gay. I don't care about any of that. What I do care about is organizations convincing kids that they are something that they are not, and putting ideas in their head that weren't in their head before, but then, they marinate, they get in there, and then people start making permanent life altering decisions based on those ideas. Now, I don't know this for sure because we haven't done our investigation yet. But I suspect that this Out Youth organization might be doing some of those things that some might call them grooming. Of course, I would never do that because I don't want to get a strike or banned or anything like that. But some might call them grooming. Obviously, it's not grooming, but some might call them grooming. And we took a little jaunt down to Out Youth's YouTube page, which is oftentimes where you can find some really good stuff. Now, I personally think that when it comes to exposing the schools, we need to find video of students, and as much as possible, which is sad. And we were talking about this in my community Zoom earlier. We hate watching videos of students that schools put on the internet. We absolutely hate it. It doesn't make us feel good. But we're not the ones putting it on the internet, and it is actually some of the most powerful footage that we can find, and the most powerful footage that we can share with other people. And so we watch it because we have to, because if we don't do it, no one else is going to do it. And it's important that the world know what's going on. Next to students, I think teachers are the most important people that we can hear from on these YouTube channels. And as it turns out, Out Youth on their YouTube channel with 259 subscribers. And the reason I talk about the number is not because it's a low number. That's not the reason I'm talking about it. The reason I talk about the low number is I really, really do suspect that the most incriminating video footage that we are going to find in relation to the schools or quite frankly the woke left, the socialists in general, it's always gonna be on these very minimally viewed YouTube channels. It's gonna be on YouTube channels with almost no subscribers. The videos are gonna have less than 100 views. That is always where the most incriminating evidence comes from, because what the woke left does is they say everything out in the open. They say everything. They have hubris. They're not ashamed of what they're doing. They're not trying to hide what they're doing. The problem is that there is so much content on the internet and there are so few people that are actually watching the content that they're putting out that no one notices. But this is where we find the most incriminating content. And so let's go to their playlist section because Out Youth has a really interesting playlist. Um, and the one I want to look at is called Q plus EDU. Q plus EDU. What could that be? Well, I know what it is because I did some recon. I did some recon yesterday. I will admit I've already looked at some of this stuff. I haven't looked at all of it, and I decided partway through my recon I wanted us to watch this together. Okay, so we go on to Q plus EDU. There are 50 videos. Let's just see. Queering your classroom. I'm gonna do a little poll. I'm going to start a poll because there are a couple videos that we could watch, and we might watch a couple videos on this stream. This stream is going to be a stream where we are doing research. It's basically going to be a happy hour on Wednesday. It's a hump day happy hour. Happy hour is a stream I do on Friday on my second channel, where we watch a woke training and I drink beer and we comment on it. And I do actually have beer with me today. I will be drinking beer today. This is hump day happy hour. But the reason that we're doing this is because I need to watch some of this content, and if I have to suffer, you guys do too. And this is what's out there. So I'm gonna do a poll though. We're gonna come up with 4 options of videos that I think could be good options. Which video should we start with? I definitely want to put this queering the classroom video. That's gonna be a video. I watched some of it yesterday. There are teachers in that video, teachers in Austin, Texas, that are talking about the steps they took to queer their classroom. So that's one that we could do. Library queries. That's a little sketch. Can I make these any okay, oh, there we go. Now I can get the full title of the video. Okay. Decentering whiteness in queerness. That might be a good video for happy hour. I'm going to pull that one up just for shits and giggles. Actually, let me pull up the queering your classroom too. And if you see anything you want to watch, let me know. Understanding minority stress. That's a contender, I think. LGBTQIA plus students need parents as allies too. Let's talk about sex. Communication for healthy relationships. This got to go on the list. Harm reduction for LGBTQ youth. Harm reduction. LGBTQ youth. That's an option. Let's see. That's a history one. Oh, oh, wait a second. Sex Q&A with Jessica and Ryan. Raising trans, gender non-conforming and non-binary kids. Oh, check this out. Queer, trans, BIPOC youth are Oh God, this has got to be an option. We have to. We fucking have to. Queer, trans, BIPOC plus youth experience, or excuse me, youth. Our existence is resistance. QT BIPOC. I actually, if I was gonna plug one, I'd probably this one. Existence equals resistance. Hang on, guys. I'm building out the poll. Let's see. OMG, that's so gay. I want to find a really good one. This is about work. some of these are obviously more targeted at young people than others. Oh, centering QT BIPOC in your GSA. In your GSA, that is obviously directed at youth. Centering QT BIPOC in GSA. That's an option. Now I have all my options filled up, but I just want to go through that. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. So let me see, guys. Our options that I'm gonna hang on. Shoot. Hang on. That's not gonna help me. No, go away. So the options that we are going to have for videos, and I want everyone to vote on this, people watching on YouTube anyway, that we can watch today is number one. The first video is called Queering Your Classroom. This is the only one I've watched some segments of. Number two video that we can choose from is Harm Reduction for LGBTQ plus youth. Number three video, and if I were to skew the poll, I might choose this one as number one. Queer Trans BIPOC Plus, Queer Trans BIPOC Plus Youth, Our Existence is Resistance. And then lastly, centering QT BIPOC in your GSA. Now, don't let my opinion on what we should watch, skew your vote. Vote for whatever you want. I think that all of them are going to be deeply educational about the community partner for the Austin Independent School District. Polls in the chat. And there you go. And mount that like button for me while you have a chance as well. Now, while you guys are taking that poll, I want to do a little bit of shilling if you don't mind. If you appreciate the work I do and would like to support it, the very best way to do that is to head over to activelyunwoke.com and you can become a monthly donor on a couple of different platforms. Number one, you can become a monthly donor on Patreon, anywhere from $5 a month all the way up to $250 a month, depending on what perks you want and how valuable you find my content. You get different perks. I don't know why one of those pictures is bigger than the other, but that's a different question to investigate later. You can get different perks based on how high you want to go per month. I love this Mad Hatter giving out the red pill t-shirt. This was one of the very first t-shirts I designed after I took the red pill. I love it. I love that whole theme. That's why I made it a special perk on Patreon. You can get that at $25 a month, and I do really appreciate that. If you don't want to give on Patreon, and I know some people might not want to, that's okay. I've got another option for you. You can join my locals community. Locals is where I spend the most time. We hang out. We just had a call earlier today. And any other Patreon members are also invited, but locals members do tend to communicate in between. You can join my locals by heading over to kb.locals.com/support or by following the link off of Actively Unwoke. It's $5 a month, $50 a year or more if you want to, but you don't have to. That's another way you can support my work. And of course, on Substack as well. All of my Substack articles are free, but they do provide an option to have a paid subscription if you value what I'm doing and you want to contribute to it and you want to see it keep going. That's available there as well. And lastly, of course, I am still fundraising for my Indiegogo campaign to help train 10,000 parents how to find out what the schools are teaching their kids. And we're going to be fundraising directly for another 19 days, but the program has already met its funding goal, which is awesome. And so now it's extra and I could really use a marketing budget, guys. I'm not going to lie. One of the things that I'm figuring out is that I'm not trying to reach parents who are already on Twitter. I'm trying to reach new normies. I'm trying to reach parents that have jobs and lives and they're concerned about what their kids are learning and they want to be able to know how to speak the language and how to push back on the school district. And that's all stuff that's going to be a part of this program. It is going to be an on-demand training program that people are going to be able to access whenever they would like to. And we're also going to be doing live monthly sessions. We're going to be updating content on a continual basis when it is deemed necessary to do so. All that is what I'm trying to do with my Schools Exposed program. If you want to contribute, you can be one of the first people to get access to the program when I launch it in January. So that's going to be really exciting. You can also get some other perks as well, to include autographed copies of my book, hand knit shawls, private training with me, whatever you like. That's going to be available on Indiegogo. Search for Schools Exposed on Indiegogo, or you can use this redirect that I set up. Just go to unwokearmy.com/parents, and that will redirect you right to the Indiegogo campaign. And I've got a lot of great stuff coming for this. I've been working on a website and a platform to be able to not only talk about the program, but also to showcase the content that we're coming up with in these investigations. These investigation streams are directly helping me to develop this program because I'm looking at school districts all over the country. I'm figuring out where they're putting their content. I'm figuring out the language they're using. I'm figuring out the best places to look to find out what's going on. I'm figuring out the right questions to ask, the terms to use. So these streams are directly contributing to the development of this program. There's a reason that I'm doing them, and that's because I need to do my research, and we might as well make some content and show people some stuff while I'm doing my research as well. So if you want to support what I'm doing, that is available as well, and I do greatly appreciate it. All right, let's take a look in the poll. And we are ending the poll in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Queering the Classroom is going to be our winner, but that other one that I wanted came in second, so we'll have to watch that second. That's all right. I am willing to honor the results of the poll, so we are going to watch starting today with Queering the Classroom. Let me just pull it up. And I'm excited to watch this too. Like I said, I did actually watch some of this yesterday. And I stopped watching it partway through because I was like, I got to do a stream about this. This is crazy. And so I am actually really excited to be able to watch the full stream today with you guys. Let me just get this set up. Oh gosh. Why isn't it working on Getter? Huh. That's so weird. Anyway, let me just make sure I've got this set up correctly. And again, we are watching content from the YouTube channel of an organization that is working with the Austin, Texas School District. That is going to be fun for everyone. I saw some chats I wanted to display earlier. Hang on. Don't even know how my own streaming tool works. Kelly says, I lived in Austin for 30 years and left 6 years ago. Now my wife and I are on a little homestead farm in a small farming town outside of Austin. We never go there. It's a disgrace. Austin was a very special place. It's a shame what it's become. Yeah, Austin is so gentrified. So gentrified. So sad. All right, guys, we are going to be watching this starting now. And again, so these are participatory streams when we're doing these. So if you have comments about what they're saying, or if you're maybe, I don't know, to make a suggestion, maybe you go find their social media while we're watching the presentation, and maybe do a little investigation on them if you like. I don't know. Bot likes to do digging. Phil likes to do digging. So that's available as well. But if you have anything you want displayed, or comments, just chat them in and I may display them on the screen at my discretion. And we will learn what these people are up to together. Let's get this party started, guys.
Hey everybody, welcome to Q Plus EDU. We are super excited to have you here this evening. My name is Frederick. My pronouns are they, them. I am Out Youth's Texas Gender and Sexuality Alliance Network Coordinator, and I will be doing the recording for tonight's session, but only the panelists will be recorded. So
captioning. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder.
And I will pass it over to E.
Hi everyone, I'm E. I use they, them pronouns. I am the founder of Q Plus EDU. I'm here today to moderate this panel and also to moderate the chat and Q&A functions. So if you have any questions throughout this, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A. Also, if there are any resources or anything like that that are mentioned, I'll be dropping those links in the chat, and links to resources will be posted on our website after this. But with that, I'll turn it over to our panelists, and let's start with Greg, if you want to introduce yourself, and if you'd like to share your name, pronouns, and any identities, privileges, or marginalizations that feel meaningful to you.
Any names, privileges, or marginalizations that feel meaningful?
Oh, I think you're muted.
And there, and we're starting off well. Okay, hey y'all. My name is Greg Bravo Benetti.
You guys can play bingo if you want. I'll get the bingo card up.
And diversity coordinator at St. Stephen's Episcopal School in Austin, Texas. And I am
Here's your bingo card.
Male, he, him, his, and obviously a white male as well.
Confess to being a white male, Greg. He's a teacher,
Cool.
Austin Schools.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carson. I identify as non-binary and use they, them pronouns. I was a teacher, public school teacher for 10 years here in Portland, Oregon. Taught everything kindergarten through 6th grade, and am an addict in recovery and now in grad school for counseling.
Hey everyone, I am Sam Davis. I am non-binary. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Assistant Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at St. Andrews here in Austin, Texas. And I'm also
the Director of Diversity, Equity at St. Andrew. Both the men, well, the non-binary and the other guy, worked for schools in San Antonio. At least they did, not San Antonio, in Austin when this was filmed. But what I want to say is, like, so I did watch a little bit of this session today, and this is no shade on what is his what's their name, Sam, the non-binary Black person. Like, this is no shade on them as a person. I'm sure they're a lovely person. They seem incredibly emotionally stunted to me. Just watch this person during the webinar. To me, and maybe I just missed parts where they weren't acting like this. I don't know. They seemed incredibly emotionally stunted, almost like they were a child in like an adult's body. Let me know if you see the same thing.
in grad school at
Thanks,
Texas
Bottle.
State
check that out.
and here in Texas as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for that. So if we want to jump right in, the first sort of question I have is just generally, what are some ways you can talk about queerness in your classroom, and what are some of your favorite strategies? So whoever would like to go first can do so.
Oh.
Or I can pick someone. Greg, you want to?
Sure. So, you know, as someone who identifies as a gay male, speaking from my perspective and telling my story is just a way that I automatically introduce queerness in the classroom. I'm very open about my husband, my life, and I do it in such a way where it's normalized, just like any other identity should be normalized. I'm an English teacher, so I feel like I have a slightly easier job of introducing queer voices in the classroom via text, articles, movies. But that's not to say, I mean, just because I'm an English teacher doesn't mean it's not just as easy to do that in a science class, in what you focus on and who you introduce and what kind of scientists you look at. So really, I think it's quite easy. At least
why are you talking about the sexuality of your authors in a science class? Why would that even matter?
For me, I tend to lean on the community, especially here in Austin. We do a lot of work with Out Youth as well as the Kind Clinic, and using our resources with them and just engaging with our students and getting their input on what they need. We have Spectrum, and then we have the dance that we host with Out Youth that you all put on every year, which we look forward to. But really just looking forward to working with the community and getting their input and just helping us with getting the word out as far as queering our community.
I think for me, similar to Greg, my identity is automatically queering the classroom, and I am open and out about my identity as a queer non-binary person. I also think that you know, authentic stories through kids come up about queer families and LGBT folks, and there's a lot of great resources, especially in the past like 5 to 10 years, of picture books of non-binary kids, of two female parents, of multiple parents, of you know, displaying many different families in many different ways, which I think is super important for kids, because especially in elementary school, they're so open at a young age to learning and to like redefining what family means, or to adding to their definitions that they already have.
Awesome. And then I guess moving from that, I'm wondering how you present topics related to the LGBTQ plus community to younger students, especially who may not have been exposed to that at home. So are there different ways that you talk about queerness to like a 1st through 3rd grader as opposed to a high school student?
Why are you talking to to a 1st grader about queerness? Did everyone
this, because I think
hang on. I just want to make sure everyone heard the question. That the person on the upper left said, how do you go about talking about queerness to a 1st grader opposed to an 11th grader? Why are you talking about queerness with a first grader in your school that you are in charge of teaching things? Incognito says federal government wants DEI as a model for the entire country. Yes, they do. We learned that by watching Joe Biden's equity session probably 6 months ago. Yeah, we did a whole stream about that for happy hour.
With the most with younger kids. I don't
Thank
know
you, Incognito.
exactly how it would be in high school, except for talking about queer identity as it is. I think for elementary students, it's a lot. It's a lot of just like I said before, like introducing different family structures and introducing the ideas of love and the different iterations of what love can look like and with who. In terms of gender identity, again, like through picture books, and we talked a little bit about this when we talked as a panel or as a group, and I think we'll probably get into it, but that there's also like authentic opportunities to bring in students' stories and students' experiences without tokenizing them. And when it comes from them, it's so much more authentic, and kids are so much more bought in than like a picture book that doesn't have any context for them. So, yeah.
So like I said before, in terms of bringing queerness into my classroom, just by being there, I feel like I do. But for me, it's, you can talk about queerness in terms of content and queerness in terms of relationality, right? So the content that I'm sharing could have a queer voice in it. And that's really important, but it's also about how do we create a space and a dynamic between teacher and students where there's an open and possibly vulnerable kind of contract between the instructor and the kids. And I think that's super important. And that means from the first day setting.
I'm going to rewind this because I'm going to clip it, but I want everyone to how do we create that private relationship? I don't know exactly the word choice he used, but it was basically a little creepy is what I'm saying. It was a little bit creepy, but I'm going to make a clip of it. So we're going to rewind it anyway. Hang on one sec, getting my machine set up.
So like I said before, in terms of bringing queerness into my classroom, just by being there, I feel like I do. But for me, it's, you can talk about queerness in terms of content and queerness in terms of relationality, right? So the content that I'm sharing could have a queer voice in it. And that's really important, but it's also about how do we create a space and a dynamic between teacher and students where there's an open and possibly vulnerable kind of contract between the instructor and the kids. And I think that's super important. And that means from the first day setting norms, talking about how we talk about identity, really diving into it instead of assuming that kids are all going to have the same competency and the same language. So just by demonstrating, the inclusivity of your classroom space, I think will breed really great conversations about queerness.
All right. That was quite a clip, wasn't it? That was quite a clip. He wants to create vulnerable relationships with students. Isn't that nice? All right, hang on. Let me just make sure this is saved. And we're good. Let's keep going.
I think one thing that we do start out with,
you never know when something we clip here is going to go viral on Twitter.
And the first lesson plan that we do is identity molecule, which is a good way to just get students engaged with identifying who they are and then unpacking that with norms of gender identity and then sexual orientation and then unpacking queerness and then the LGBTQIA plus spectrum in those conversations. But that's a good way to start having those conversations.
Hang on, clipping that too. Sorry, I should just kept going. I
think we'll
should have just kept going to talk about the identity molecule.
Breed really great conversations about queerness.
I think one thing that we do start out with is we have a class for our freshmen called Habits of Mind. And the first lesson plan that we do is identity molecule, which is a good way to just get students engaged with identifying who they are and then unpacking that with norms of gender identity and then sexual orientation, and then unpacking queerness and then the LGBTQIA plus spectrum in those conversations. But that's a good way to start having those conversations early on. But that's one activity that we start out with.
That's nice. That's nice. Yes, unpacking. Anytime they use the word unpacking, people are talking about this in the chat. Anytime they use the word unpacking, that's generally code for we're trying to convince you of something that we want you to know. It's not about talking. It's not about discussing. It's not about any of those things. It's about we are going to force our far left ideology on you. And that is just the way it goes.
Awesome. And I think we sort of started touching on this already, but Greg or Sam, either of you, if you want to talk a little bit more about ways that you queer middle and high school classrooms, especially since in those classrooms, students have likely started the process of coming out. You're more likely to encounter students who do identify as queer, as opposed to in an elementary school classroom.
Yes, James Jones, that's a good
bet.
How
do you sort of navigate that? And not only teaching about queerness, but also making sure that marginalized students, LGBTQ plus students, feel safe in your classroom.
Sam, do you wanna get that one?
I was gonna let you segue it because I got to hang out with you and your kids. And that was a great experience for me.
Yeah, well, so I think it's really important that you have three different constituencies that you have to think about when you're talking about a classroom. You have the students, you have the parents, and you have the administration. And I think there has to be a direct alignment between those three things, right? And typically, we can talk about student discomfort, we can talk about parent discomfort, or we can talk about administrative discomfort. I think the most pernicious of those is administrative, right? You need to have the backing of the people in at the head of just the kind of bureaucratic pyramid, right? Because without that backing, you don't want to be kind of a lone wolf in your class. Once you have administrative backing, right, it's really important, I think, just
they think the kids are theirs.
Kids, like I said, is just to be, I'm glad that in high school we can have open and honest conversations, right? I don't know, Carson, bless you for dealing with little kids all the time. My mom is a fourth grade teacher. My sister's a kindergarten teacher, and definitely the strategies that they use to queer their classrooms, right, are very different than mine. So really, to me, it's about making sure that you have the administrative backing that way in case you come across any problems. And then in terms of student kind of awareness.
Did you guys hear that? Hang on. My mom is a first grade teacher. I think some other relative is something else. And so when you're teaching kindergarteners, you have to use very different strategies to queer your classroom than he has to use in high school. Isn't that nice?
I really tap into my institution's resources in terms of our affinity groups and our clubs.
Affinity groups means segregation.
Because I think also when you're, the more you can have student interaction and not just coming from you, the more you can bring in other voices, student voices. I think when students hear from each other, they're more apt to listen. And so I think it's really important too.
I would piggyback off the affinity space and having protected time for the students during the school day. I think when they see that that time is held as sacred and valued, they appreciate it more, as it's not looked at as a secret, or it's not a hidden space or something that's not valued overall as the whole school seeing that, hey, we're taking the time out to acknowledge you for who you are and saying that this is your time, and making sure that other students throughout the school understand that, hey, we see you and we value you as allies, but this is a space for our students who are of the spectrum. So I think if you have that
students of the spectrum,
other students as well as the administration, and having those other teachers who the students can look to for just a safe space to just even drop in, and just if you're having a bad day or you just want to unpack with someone, I think having those three pillars are definitely a good way to get everyone on board collectively.
And we touched on this a little bit, but can you speak more to ways that administrators can be more supportive of teachers who want to queer their classrooms, and of students who are, in these classrooms, in schools in general? What do you need administrators to do to support you?
Show up to some of the engagements. I know for the public school, it's a little bit different than the private school sector, but for any of the policy changes, just showing up in solidarity with the students, coming to the student-led discussion groups if there are any.
Kelly, is St. Andrews a private school? Which is proof, by the way, private schools and charter schools are not necessarily better than public schools. They're not necessarily better. In fact, parents usually have less rights at private schools than they do at public schools. And so just because you take your kid out of the public schools or use that school choice money to send them to private schools doesn't mean you're getting away from this problem. In fact, what we're seeing in this is that if it's the wrong private school, the problem actually could be much worse.
Things that are arising and students want to feel heard and need to have their voices heard from people in power. Thinking about what books we're reading in the English department and thinking about what that is showing our students about what we feel about is considered normal. Thinking about what we're doing overall in our school as far as policies for athletics, our bathrooms, our gymnasiums, overall, just the small things that we don't think about. What are pronouns listed as far as on our paperwork, in our online portals, our LMSs, our learning management systems. Just those small things that we don't think or we overlook. Those are the things that really matter to the students. But those are some of the things that I really pinpoint and try to look at when I'm doing my work. But those are my main pillars.
I would also, just to kind of add to what Sam's talking about, I think it's really important to have a DEI mission statement. I think the administration actually has to craft something, a living document that others can refer to, right? Because unless it's in the DNA of who you are as an institution, until it's systematized, it can easily change. And so having a DEI mission statement is great. Also, really kind of what Sam said too, just having professional development, right?
Teacher training.
That DEI work and queerness are really important, not something you do once every 5 years, but you have professional development around queer issues once a year. Because I think that really—
Hang on, I'm gonna clip this, but while we're doing that, so the reason I want to clip this is I want to really make the point, when you're looking into what the schools are teaching your kids, you have got to make sure you know what professional development they're bringing into the schools. Okay, they will usually have this on the school district website because they advertise it publicly. Sometimes though, they only keep it behind like the private intranet or whatever. But if you can call the school, if you're a parent in the district, you can call the school and ask them what they're doing and get copies of their training documents. And if they don't want to give it to you, you can FOIA that. You have got to make sure you know what professional development training they are doing in your school district, because whatever professional development training they're doing, that's going to make its way into the classroom. And a lot of school districts are paying big, big, big bucks. And by the way, you can FOIA their contracts with the trainers. And what you're going to find out, when we were looking into the Cambridge schools, we now know that Dina Simmons woman in the Cambridge, Massachusetts schools was paid over $30,000 for the professional development training that she did. We know that because an engaged parent in Cambridge, Massachusetts watched the school board meeting after we started doing our investigations. This parent watched the school board meeting where they awarded the contract for over $30,000. And for those of you who don't know, maybe you're new, the woman that we're talking about, the trainer that they paid, is on the internet in multiple videos talking about how she wants to abolish capitalism and whiteness. And that was who Cambridge, Massachusetts paid $30,000 to come in and train their teachers. These are things you need to look at. I know this is not the sexy stuff, but this is really the stuff that makes its way into the classroom. Let me just get this ready to clip this because I want to use this later.
Also, really kind of what Sam said too, just having professional development, right? Making sure that that DEI work and queerness are really important, not something you do once every 5 years, but you have professional development around queer issues once a year, because I think that really demonstrates to the faculty your priorities as an institution as well.
Yeah, I want to echo that too about the professional development opportunities, especially like I was going to say, like it helps most when administration remains teachable and willing to learn, which is like a great example to set for everyone in the educational community. But it does start with the administration in terms of the tone. And when getting or looking for professional development opportunities related to gender identity and sexual orientation, going to those folks who have the experience with it, right? Not the people, not straight cis people who are writing about how they can support queer folks. I think allies and advocates are extremely important and not the first line of resource.
I want to circle back to sort of what happens within the classroom and how do you navigate the different levels of knowledge between students? So within
I should become, okay, what do you guys think about this idea? Let me know if I should, this is a pie in the sky idea. I'm not saying I'm going to do this, but I might do this. Should I become like an undercover like queerness trainer in the public schools? I've got the haircut for it already. I think I could totally pull it off. I know how to speak. Should I like I can create a whole fucking website and market myself as like an undercover like diversity trainer specifically targeting the public schools? I bet I could get some sweet contracts. I'd probably get in trouble though. I'd probably get sued. Let's just marinate on this idea. How can I could answer RFPs all over the place. Let's just marinate on this idea. I just want to put it out there. I want to marinate it on it. Well, Sin, I can call it like, I can call myself, I can change my name. But like put all my same credentials. You guys can give me testimonials. I don't have bad tattoos. I have fucking amazing tattoos. I have 20 hours worth of tattoos sitting on my arm right now. I have amazing tattoos. And I did have a nose ring in high school, I'll have you know. I absolutely did. I still have the scar from it. Let's just marinate on this idea. Let's just think about it. Let's think about it. Think about it.
In a classroom, you might have students who are queer and trans, and that's their identity, very experienced in dealing with their own identity. And then you also have students who have never heard of queer people.
But talk to Phil about that.
But
talk
they're
to
raised
Phil
in homophobic
like
families.
Through DM.
So how do you navigate that? How do you deal with it when issues arise? And what advice do you have for teachers when trying to deal with those often uncomfortable situations?
Wait, hang on. I wasn't listening to that.
Sam, I remember you had an answer to this in our planning meeting, if you want to start.
Hang on. Did she just ask how to deal with like uncomfortable situations with regards to parents? Or they, I guess. Sorry, they. Okay, hang on. I just want to listen to her question again. Sorry, guys. My fault.
I want to circle back to sort of what happens within the classroom and how do you navigate the different levels of knowledge between students? So within a classroom, you might have students who are queer and trans, and that's their identity, very experienced in dealing with their own identity. And then you also have students who have never heard of queer people. You have students who have, but they're raised in homophobia.
It's not at all entrapment. I am a completely and honestly more qualified corporate trainer than most of the people doing this training. I know how to do this training. I can actually deliver this training. So no, it's not entrapment at all. I am a PhD in fucking psychology with a specialization in organizational psychology. I've been doing corporate training for a decade. I'm actually a more advanced corporate trainer than most of the people doing this type of training. So no, it's not entrapment at all. I would just deliver them far better training that isn't crazy. I would fulfill all the parts of the contract. I would just do it in a way where I'm not going to teach them how to indoctrinate students. And this is not what Veritas does. I am actually in real life a corporate trainer. In real life, not on the internet, in real life.
homophobic families. So how do you navigate that? How do you deal with it when issues arise? And what advice do you have for teachers when trying to deal with those often uncomfortable situations? Sam, I remember you had an answer to this in our planning meeting, if you want to start.
Oh yes, I said that I normally give out content warnings to my queer students when there's going to be a conversation that I feel like they might want to opt out of. But when there is an instance of a microaggression, I try to disrupt it and have a conversation immediately with the class. I feel like sometimes when we're in the moment, we feel uncomfortable and we want to brush things off or try to pull people aside and have a small conversation instead of tackling it collectively as a group. But I feel like in the moment, it's best to have everyone in the room address these conversations, because you never want to make anyone feel as if they haven't been seen, and you never want to make anyone in the party feel as if they have been neglected in the room. But that's just my personal opinion on that.
It's like my DEI director says, silence is violence, right? And so if you don't stop it there, you're doing kind of irreparable harm, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's, to me, right, it's about acculturation, and it's about making sure that everyone's on the same page. And that might mean taking a step back before if you're in a science classroom and you're talking about, I don't know, a lesbian chemist, right?
Why does it matter that she's a lesbian?
Through that part of an identity, but actually take a second to talk to the students about what sexuality is, what human sexuality is.
Why?
Right? It's for me, in my classroom, it's very easy. When I talk about gender, if I make sure that I have designated at least a 145-minute session to talk about gender as a construct before we even get into the content.
I am sorry, right? Guys. I know we've made like 18 clips already, but like this is just rife. This is rife for clips. I'm so sorry. Hang on, I need to clip this. I'm so sorry that you guys are having to sit through me making clips, but this is just, we have to. And sometimes the clips we make go viral on Twitter, and that's kind of fun.
They have been neglected in the room. But that's just my personal opinion on that.
It's like my DEI director says, silence is violence, right? And so if you don't stop it there, you're doing kind of irreparable harm, right? Yeah, it's, to me, right, it's about acculturation, and it's about making sure that everyone's on the same page. And that might mean taking a step back before if you're in a science classroom and you're talking about, I don't know, a lesbian chemist, right? To not rush through that part of an identity, but actually take a second to talk to the students about what sexuality is, what human sexuality is, right? It's for me, in my classroom, it's very easy. When I talk about gender, if I make sure that I have designated at least a 145-minute session to talk about gender as a construct before we even get into the content, right? Because you can't expect, you can hold everyone to a high standard, but you have to at least make sure that they have the education for them to understand what that standard is. And I feel like sometimes as teachers, we're so bent on rushing through material, on seeing things as non-essential, as kind of brushed to the side. But really, it's about how you frame an argument and how you acculturate students so that they can be active and good participants in a conversation.
Got it.
Awesome. I just want to say, Jonathan, I see your question in the Q&A, and we will get to that momentarily. But I wanted to talk about, how do you respond to parents who might have a problem with you talking about queerness in your classroom, who might say that it's pushing an agenda? So how do you as a teacher respond to those complaints? And then how can administrators help you navigate those situations?
I can feel a clip coming already. Here we go. Exactly, Reagan. Here we go.
This is tricky. And my first instinct was to say, like, having had the discussion already with administration, with the, bringing that to light, that might be a topic that comes up, and asking how your administration will support you when and if that happens. I also think for me, it's really helpful, or it was really helpful to have other educators, especially in the same grade level team as I am, also at a meeting with parents.
So they gang up on parents.
Don't identify
saying.
as queer in any way.
They gang up
who
on
are
parents.
also validating the importance of queering the classroom, especially in terms of gender identity in elementary school. So it becomes less of like I'm pushing some.
I didn't see the we gang up on parents to push gender identity in elementary school on the bingo card today. All right. I yeah. I told you I was gonna clip this. I'm sorry. I need to. I need to go back. What I want to get is her asking the full question. And then I want to get the response. I'm so sorry you guys are having to sit through these clips. I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just have to. Because this will save me so much time later, guys. You have no idea. This saves me like hours of time later.
To at least make sure that they have the education for them to understand what that standard is. And I feel like sometimes as teachers
might say that it's, and we will get. Awesome. I just want to say, Jonathan, I see your question in the Q&A, and we will get to that momentarily. But I wanted to talk about how do you respond to parents who might have a problem with you talking about queerness in your classroom, who might say that it's pushing an agenda. So how do you as a teacher respond to those complaints? And then how can administrators help you navigate those situations?
This is tricky. And my first instinct was to say, like, having had the discussion already with administration, with the, bringing that to light, that might be a topic that comes up, and asking how your administration will support you when and if that happens. I also think for me, it's really helpful, or it was really helpful to have other educators, especially in the same grade level team as I am, also at a meeting with parents who don't identify as queer in any way, who are also validating the importance of queering the classroom, especially in terms of gender identity in elementary school. So it becomes less of like I'm pushing some sort of agenda, and more of like, this is what we believe is important for kids to know, and it's happening throughout all the 4th and 5th grade classrooms, and this is why.
Yeah, Carson, that's really well put. I mean, the only way that you can deal with parents, in my opinion, is by having the administration draw a line in the sand and say, this is who we are, and these are the decisions we're making. It's not about Greg. It's not about him being gay. It's not about your discomfort, right? This is who we are as a school. And until your school is able to do that, that's when there's really going to be a problem.
Cool. The next question I had is,
all right. Wow. They basically just said that if parents have, did you notice that there was not a single person on this panel who said, if parents have a problem with this, then we will have a discussion with parents and try to come to a reasonable compromise and find out what they're comfortable with and what their concerns are. That is actually what the answer should have been, right? The answer is you listen to the parents, you hear out their concern, you try to really understand what they're most concerned about, and you try to offer them reasonable accommodations based on their concerns. That is what the answer should have been. What the answer is we will gang up on parents, bringing multiple teachers into the room to tell parents what's what. And we don't really give a flying fuck what the parents think, because the administration will have our back, and the administration will draw the line in the sand. And if the parents don't like it, they can go screw. That was what their answer was. That is insane. Yes, Reagan, this entire video is turning out to be a clip. And we are now, by the way, past the point where I stopped watching. So I haven't seen any of this. I saw it up to a point, but I haven't seen any of what we're watching now. So that's just great. That was an excellent clip. I really just want to make sure I got that clip because I'm not actually entirely positive I did. If I didn't, I will go back and get it later. But oh yeah, I got it. Never mind. All right, let's keep going.
What is the role of cis and or het teacher allies? So that's cisgender and or heterosexual teachers. How can they queer their classrooms, and then how can they support queer teachers in schools?
Good choice, guys. Excellent poll results. Well done.
I think with just a good sense of self-reflection and being aware of who they are and how they show up, and just asking some basic questions like, when did you know like your own sexuality or your own identity, and being able to ask those uncomfortable questions that we have to ask ourselves every day and just challenging themselves. I think that's a good start. I think the allies that I work with show up in ways that when I have moments where I have people who are questioning things that I do, they can challenge them when I'm not in the room and have that space taken to where I don't have to worry about facilitating those uncomfortable conversations because I know they have my back. Those are the type of allies and co-conspirators that I'm looking for.
Co-conspirators.
Those are the qualities that I really hope that people will have for me when I'm not in those spaces. They have my back, basically.
The next thing I had is, do you teach cishet students how to be allies? And if so, how do you do that? Do you think it's just a natural result of talking about queerness in your classroom, or do you talk about allyship specifically? How do you navigate those conversations?
I mean, for my school, we talk definitely about queerness in general, and through that education, hopefully engender allyship, right? But what I think, again, not to put everything on the administration, but there has to be a higher level of engagement. There has to be, we have a chapel system where we go to chapel every day. Allyship needs to be taught.
It's a religious private school,
and therefore it can be practiced in the classroom and strengthened in the classroom, right? We also have a very
they haven't met Gabs, have they?
Thank you, Incognito. Is a great little factory for social justice warriors and allies, right? Because it's exactly what we talk about.
What?
But I think,
Wait, what? It's a great little factory for social justice warriors. We're not even halfway through this presentation. Not even halfway through. God, clip. I've never heard a teacher admit that their goal is to make social justice warriors. I've never heard that before.
Cool. The next thing I had is, do you teach cishet students how to be allies? And if so, how do you do that? Do you think it's just a natural result of talking about queerness in your classroom, or do you talk about allyship specifically? How do you navigate those conversations?
I mean, for my school, we talk definitely about queerness in general, and through that education, hopefully engender allyship, right? But what I think, again, not to put everything on the administration, but there has to be a higher level of engagement. There has to be, we have a chapel system where we go to chapel every day. Allyship needs to be talked about to the entire school community, and therefore it can be practiced in the classroom and strengthened in the classroom, right? We also have a very vibrant GSA, which is a great little factory for social justice warriors and allies, right? Because it's exactly what we talk about. But I think, allyship can be done individually, but when it's done on a larger scale with more backing, I think it's even more powerful.
He said, I didn't actually hear this the first time. He said that their GSA is the factory for social justice warriors. The GSA. Holy shit. Yes. And this is the point I keep making. This video, guys, this video has been on the internet for 2 years. This video has been on the internet for 2 years. This video is not new. This video, let me just, hang on, let me show you. This video has been on the internet for 2 years. September 11th of 2020. It has 91 views. There are more people that are going to see this video today on this stream than have watched this video in the entire time it's been on the internet. My point is this. They are telling us what they are doing out loud. We just need to listen to it. This is why we're watching so many of these videos. There is so much content to get through, but they are telling us what they are doing because they have massive, massive hubris. They're proud of what they're doing. They want to brag about what they're doing. This has been sitting on the internet for 2 years, and we are probably the first non-allies to ever watch it. It's all in the open. You've got to look at what your schools are doing. You have to be responsible to look for what your schools are doing. Because try as I might, and I do these streams all the time where all we do is watch woke videos. All we do, we watch so much of this content. We watch more of this content than I think anyone else on the internet. Because someone needs to. But we can't, this is a drop in the bucket for how much is out there. And I know that this content is hard to watch for a lot of people. Believe me, I become very desensitized to it at this point. I get it. And there's times when it's still hard for me, and I want you to hear that. There are times when it is still very hard for me to watch this content. Last week's happy hour was very difficult for me. Watching students the entire time, it was extremely difficult. But we need to watch this content because no one else is. 91 views. There are more people watching this stream right now across all the platforms that I'm streaming on that have watched this video in the entire time it's been on the internet. This is why we do this. This is why we do this.
Yeah, and I think in elementary school, it's not talked to, like, it's not openly discussed as like, this is allyship and this is what allyship means for different marginalized identities, as far as it is like talking about marginalized identities and how the experiences one person has are not the experiences are of another. And like, how can we learn about each other and our own identities and support people who aren't like us, who don't look like us, who believe in different things, who, you know, whose families are super different in the classroom, because we're a classroom community, which I think that I was really fortunate to be able to do pretty successfully because I had my students for 2 years. So it really helped to have them a 4th grade year and then again as a 5th grade year, because they already knew each other really well and then could set the tone for the coming in students about like the culture of the classroom and the culture of we take care of each other and we do stand up for each other and we don't allow, you know, teasing or bullying to happen.
So I see that we've had quite a few questions come in. So I'm going to start with the questions that were submitted via the Google form that was sent out before this. And the first question is, I thought the word queer was offensive and that the term gay should be used if I'm talking about homosexuality. Is the word queer okay for me to use as a heterosexual? So if any of you have input or advice for this person.
Academically speaking, using queer as an adjective and not a noun is completely acceptable in the university setting, which has then trickled kind of down into just general societal acceptance. And so yes, while it used to be a word that had and still may have negative connotations. It's been co-opted and appropriated in such a way that really, if your intent, you can read someone's intent and how they say it, and usually what noun follows. But queer class, queer folks, queer literature, I believe is completely acceptable for a straight person to say. But it could also be an individualized choice. Carson and Sam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention too that, like, for me, I use the word queer because it does cover several identities that we're talking about. That encompasses gender identity and various sexual orientations. And there are so many different gender identities and so many different sexual orientations that like saying homosexuality is very specific. And that means like one cisgendered person, usually a man or a woman, with, or seeking partnership, romantic partnership with someone of that exact same gender. So yeah, queer has in the past.
Congratulations, Shayna. Well done.
Been thought of as, or has been a derogatory term. And I do think it's up to the individual as well. I think that queer, is more inclusive and covers much more of the umbrella of gender identity spectrum and sexual orientation spectrum.
For me personally, the word queer is liberating and freeing. So I personally, I love using the word queer and identify with it very much so. So I don't think you using the word would be offensive to anyone, but I appreciate the question and I thank you for asking.
In fact, the word that made me kind of have a effective response, in that question, was the word homosexuality, right? More than queer, just because that has so many kind of clinical connotations, where gay versus homosexual, just the gay being so much more accepting. I think queer is also in a similar vein.
I think homosexual comes from like the DSM and psychiatric diagnoses too, which, like, thankfully in 1980, homosexuality was no longer in the DSM-5, but that wasn't that long ago. And so that's a term that we want, like, that I don't want to be near, because I don't want to be identified as someone who has a mental health diagnosis because I identify as loving someone different than who people expect me to love. I also just wanted to add that in terms of queer for me,
I think it's St. Andrews, not St. Stephen. I could be wrong about that. I'm pretty sure it was St. Andrews.
I think queer has been a much,
but it might be St. Stephen's. I don't remember.
Use, especially in terms of my own sexual orientation as I explore that, because I don't know, and I no longer have like one of those terms LGB that really describe who I want to love. So queer does a better job of that.
Yeah, definitely agree. I'm also a queer, non-binary student person, and I don't view the word queer when used as an adjective as a slur. Like, I would say in your classroom, don't say the queers or like they're a queer. That's when it becomes derogatory and that's a problem. But it's totally okay to say queer people. Just use it in an adjective sense. It's the same as with like racial designations. It's okay to call people Black. Don't say the Blacks. So just thinking about like using it as an adjective, but also if you just don't feel comfortable referring to people as queer, it's fine to talk about the LGBTQ+ community. I find queer easier to say, but there are also alternatives. But I would definitely agree that homosexual is very limiting and not an accurate descriptor for, I would say, most members of the queer and trans community. But the next question we got was, when I was working as a Spanish college professor, it was easier for me to queer my classroom by assigning and analyzing cultural productions that center on the LGBTQ+ experiences in my upper level Spanish courses. However, now that I will be teaching high school Spanish, I'm a little worried that some of the reading / text / films that I have used in the past are not age appropriate. How do we as educators take into account our students' age in the process of queering our classrooms?
You just teach Spanish.
So we touched on that a little more, but do you want to talk about sort of adapting your curriculum based on age?
You just teach Spanish.
So I was an Italian teacher for many years before I was an English teacher. And honestly, I think language teachers have an easier job than English teachers because all you're doing is producing sentences and you get to choose the subject, object, and verb that are there, right? So if thinking about how deeply ingrained heteronormativity is, that it has to be he and she went to the store, have some fun with it. I mean, use examples that reflect the real world and the intersectional world in which we live. And therefore, like, you can teach gender through grammar. I'm a huge geek, and that just made me so excited, right? So I think just because you can't talk about like water for chocolate in an elementary class doesn't mean you can't have a lot of fun with the examples. Same thing for math teachers. I remember sweating thinking about them right now, but those long word problems, have some fun and mix it up, right? And that's a really great kind of way to show how inclusive your space is.
Oh my God. Hang on. Actually, I need to clip that. I wasn't going to clip that originally because it was like, how do I as a college professor teach Spanish like in high school now, like using queerness? But the fact that he was like, you can teach queerness in English, you can teach queerness in Spanish, you can teach queerness in math. I fucking have to clip that. I'm sorry. That was crazy. Okay, I think that's it. I think that's good enough. God damn it.
On the LGBTQ plus experiences in my upper level Spanish course.
Hang on, I need to clip the whole thing. I need to get her to talk about it, the professor. I need the whole context.
Just use it in an adjective sense. It's the same as with descriptor for queer and trans community. But the next question we got was, when I was working as a Spanish college professor, it was easier for me to queer my classroom by assigning and analyzing cultural productions that center on the LGBTQ plus experiences in my upper level Spanish courses. However, now that I will be teaching high school Spanish, I'm a little worried that some of the reading / text / films that I have used in the past are not age appropriate. How do we as educators take into account our students' age in the process of queering our classrooms? I look forward to this discussion. So we touched on that a little more, but do you want to talk about sort of adapting your curriculum based on age, or?
So I was an Italian teacher for many years before I was an English teacher. And honestly, I think language teachers have an easier job than English teachers because all you're doing is producing sentences and you get to choose the subject, object, and verb that are there, right? So if thinking about how deeply ingrained heteronormativity is, that it has to be he and she went to the store, have some fun with it. I mean, use examples that reflect the real world and the intersectional world in which we live. And therefore, like, you can teach gender through grammar. I'm a huge geek, and that just made me so excited, right? So I think just because you can't talk about like water for chocolate in an elementary class doesn't mean you can't have a lot of fun with the examples. Same thing for math teachers. I remember sweating thinking about them right now, but those long word problems, have some fun and mix it up, right? And that's a really great kind of way to show how inclusive your space is.
God damn it. I swear to God, these people are going to send me to an early grave. I swear to God. No, never say that out loud. We're not manifesting that today. We're not doing that today. Thank you guys for bearing with me. Guys, we are watching a webinar that has been on the internet for 2 years that only has 91 views on it. It's going to get more views today than it's ever gotten in its entire life. And this is from an organization in Austin, Texas, that is partnered officially with the school district in Austin, Texas. And these are teachers talking about how they are queering their classroom. They do this all out in the open. All we need to do is find it and watch it and clip it and put that shit out there in hopes that some intrepid journalist actually does their job and becomes a journalist, or maybe I step in and do journalism for them when they refuse. But that's what we're doing here today. Please mount that like button if you have not already, and I appreciate it.
I just wanted to share that someone who's participating in our panel or who's here also said that there are definitely age-appropriate materials for the Spanish classroom and gave a couple of resources, the Times Educational Supplement, and mentioned that gender identity is a topic on the Spanish A-levels in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, so there are definitely resources out there if you're just looking for ways to integrate queerness. Definitely do a Google search for just like how to talk about queer things in your math classroom or your science classroom. And there are going to be a lot of forums and other people who are looking for the same thing. So if you're feeling stuck, that's definitely an option.
I also just too want to reiterate that talking about sexual orientation is very different than talking about sex. And that's something that gets really muddy to some folks who maybe are not so used to talking about sexual orientation and just having an assumed understanding of what sexual orientation means and does, but feeling attracted or feeling drawn to someone of the same gender than you or someone other than whatever the opposite is or whatever isn't talking about sex. So even in an elementary classroom, talking about lesbian, gay, and bisexual folks is something that they understand and comprehend and isn't inappropriate. We're not talking about sex.
And I just wanted to uplift Frederick's comment in the chat that says, yeah, Jose and William can definitely get a mortgage in math class. And that's true. Like, you can talk about, you know, same gender married couples. You can, yeah, get really creative with your word problems. But I wanted to bring up the next question, which is from the Q&A. And it says, I'm an upper school Spanish teacher at a private school in Baltimore. How important is it to take into account intersectionality when we queer the classroom? Being queer will look different depending on your sociocultural background. One thing I struggled with when I was in high school as a queer Latinx who had just migrated to this country was to identify with or relate to a white-centric queer identity, which was what I had access to. And before you all answer, I'm dropping a link in the chat to a panel that we're hosting. It's called Decentering Whiteness and Queerness. And it's on August 28th at 6 p.m. So if you want to learn more about how queerness doesn't have to be white, definitely encourage you to come to that. But if any of our panelists have a response to that, intersectional approaches to queerness in your classroom.
I mean, I think that's critical, is talking about the intersectionality. I think that all of us here would agree that we, just us, you know, we embody different identities, and as and it even sounds like in the question that you're asking that you didn't experience like accepting intersectionality in your experience, and how detrimental that might have been for you. So I think thinking about and taking into account intersectionality when queering the classroom goes way beyond what the characters of Rent are doing, or like what Queer Eye for the Straight Guy is, you know, like there's so much more.
And especially for all the English teachers out there, if you teach hyper contemporary fiction around identity and queerness, it's always going to be intersectional, always. I mean, really, you can't escape it. And so teaching hyper contemporary stuff is also usually a great way of making sure you're not telling just one story.
I would also suggest getting a book. It's called Queering the Color Line. It's a pretty awesome book. It's a really informative. But the intersectionality, it's really important. I mean, I'm Black, I'm non-binary, I'm queer. And sometimes growing up, I didn't really have anyone to look to as far as seeing myself being reflected until I got older. But I understand how you feel. Oh, thank you for putting the link in there, E. I appreciate that. But yeah, it can be a struggle. That's what I can say. It definitely can be a struggle, but there are so many resources now that you can utilize, and so many books and so many YouTube.
Yes, we utilize resource. We utilize YouTube as well.
Definitely just do your research.
Oh, Greg is doing his PhD at UC Berkeley. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So our next question.
Thank you for that, adult human female.
Okay.
Can I just drop into the chat too? I don't know if you all have listened to the TED Talk or the YouTube talk that Chimamanda Ngozi, I don't want to say it as correctly as I can, Ngozi Adichie has about the danger of a single story. I think that that's a really powerful video and has been watched in our professional development in a public school before the school year starts. So I'm just going to drop that in the chat.
Carson, you read my, I was just about to say that exact same TED Talk. So say when.
Yep. Great minds think alike. Yeah, so while Carson's looking that up, the next question is, if you have this DEI statement at one school, have any of your respective school districts made this effort to include queer and trans representation in their district statements so that there's a school district approach and your school doesn't stand alone in this effort?
Okay, I just want to make a point here. When we're doing investigations into the schools, again, remember, this was 2 years ago. When we are doing investigations into the schools, we always start at the district level. Because in most cases, especially in urban areas, it's going to start at the district level and go into the schools. So if you want to start at the school level, if you're looking into your kid's school, that's fine. But it might be more at the district level to find out. Then you can go to the school. You might end up finding more resources on the district website than you find on the school website. So just be mindful of that if you're using this as inspiration to do your own investigations.
So I know Greg and Sam are both in private schools. If you can speak to any of that, that would be great. I can talk a little bit about districts. I don't know a ton, but.
I think I could say we kind of team up in our efforts to do collaborative work together to make sure that our students are feeling seen and heard and throwing conferences. But as far as other schools, I'm not really sure what they're doing, but I know that we are trying to be as inclusive as possible. We have Spectrum on our campus for our LGBTQIA+ students, and Greg runs a wonderful program at St. Stephen's with his students. And they are very active in the community. I just love what you do there. So yeah, we're trying to stay inclusive and on top of things.
I mean, given that I teach at an independent school, I really can't speak to districts per se, but I do know that there's a desire out there for collaboration, even between public and private schools. There are multiple dialogues and conversations about sharing resources and knowledge. So if that's any indication, there may just be a kind of partnership waiting to happen, but I really can't speak about school districts specifically.
I also feel weird talking about where I live because there are administrative directives in the district in which I taught. But again, I live in Portland, Oregon, and
we've looked at them.
I recognize that that is a very different place than Central Texas. But there are administrative directives.
Well, not that different,
especially around gender identity and transgender and gender nonconforming students, and referring to them by their preferred pronouns and providing safe spaces for them to use the restroom and more.
Can I just jump in for a second? Carson, you just said something that made me think of a helpful thing in terms of pronouns and administration. It's really important in terms of open communication when you have a change of pronoun with a student, that someone is there, you have some kind of coordinator that will then therefore disseminate that knowledge to the rest of the faculty. So therefore it's not the person telling every single time that they've had a pronoun change. That's just like a simple thing that can be done in a school to make it so much more inclusive, where the onus isn't on the student to explain their identity, but just have the faculty accept it, behind the scenes. I always say like diversity work should be like a duck in a pond. Like when kids see us, they should just see like this placid animal on the water. They should not be seeing our feet going at 200 miles per hour underneath, right? And so just that might be one really easy way of making sure your institution is a little bit more inclusive.
And I think also that just reminded me, in terms of supporting especially trans and non-binary students in your schools, it's really important to have a policy set in place for like name changes, pronoun changes, gender marker changes, anything like that. Because I know in my school district, it's often like a student contacts the registrar and then the registrar doesn't know the answer and then they have to contact the district and it's a whole thing. So having policies in place is something that administrations can do to make sure, again, like systematizing things is really important. And so making sure you have systems in place to support trans and non-binary students. And I also wanted to just say in terms of the district things, I think if there's a way that you can advocate for DEI statements and inclusive policies at a district level, that's definitely really important. Because especially in the public school system, you know, it's very hierarchical. You have to obey your state's laws as they relate to education, and then you have to follow the district policy. And so what one school does might be really limited, especially if the district isn't supportive of LGBTQ+ students. So I just wanted to emphasize that like advocacy at the district level is super important.
I'd also echo that advocacy from the parent level is by far the most powerful. As a teacher, I unfortunately don't have that much power within my district. I can scream until my face is blue, and yet I'm just one teacher in a sea of other teachers. But when it comes from kids, and then especially comes from parents, especially parent allies and advocates of creating inclusive and supportive and affirming policies for these students specifically, and how that benefits every student in a school or in a school district.
Yeah, and there are links in the chat to 2 other Q+ EDU sessions. So there's one, I know the recording is up for Know Your Rights trivia, and it's just about LGBTQ+ students' rights in schools. And so that's a really good resource if there are any students watching this and you want to know more about what your rights are, especially as it comes to being a queer student, you know, what schools are required to support you in.
So they're catering to queer students.
I also put a link to our panel that was
I know everyone is shocked.
LGBTQIA+ students need parents as allies too. And that recording is not up yet, but there's a really great list of resources and the recording should be up in the next few days. And so that panel was just about how important parent allies are in terms of education advocacy. So yes, Carson, definitely agree with that. The next question I have in the Q&A, I know there were a couple in the chat as well, and I will come back to those. But in the Q&A, this one says, how do you define or explain the word queer to your students, parents, and coworkers?
There's a great graphic as queer as an umbrella, literally. I don't have access to it right now, but I'm sure that if I Googled it in a second that it could come up. But when talking about queer, using it as an umbrella term, as a term that encompasses many different identities and orientations, is how I explain it. And again,
yes, you can. Adult human female. If you could, I will put my email address. No, actually, just can you please email activelyunwoke@gmail.com? So I'll put it in the chat. activelyunwoke@gmail.com. And if you guys ever want to send me documents or you want to send me things, that is the very best email address you can send them to, because that's where I keep everything. So thank you, and I appreciate it.
I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about identities, and identities are really different and a crucial part of who you are. I mean, we could argue that sex is too, but like that's a whole nother story that we're not going to go to, but like we all got here some way. But yeah, it's pretty, I don't know. I'll look for it and I will drop a link in, but that's how I explain it.
I mean, I think we kind of touched on this question earlier, so I don't want to repeat, you know, the great stuff that Carson and Sam said. But I think,
thank you, adult human female. Appreciate it.
as we move into 2020, 2021, we realize that like identity is complicated and boxes aren't easy. You can't just check a box and pigeonhole someone into a certain kind of identity. And that complication breeds, I don't know, a little bit of ignorance and a little bit of fear. But really, identity is so fluid that it's impossible to label it, right? Queerness is just a way of being in line with the times and being in line with that fluidity to embrace all different tags, all different identifiers, right? Rather than try to continually create a new
Guys, we're gonna watch that other
acronym
one after this,
until
so
it becomes
I'm
unwieldy.
watching one more. If you want to stick around, great. If you don't want to, you don't have to. No harm, no foul. I understand some people's getting dinner time. But I'm gonna watch that other one that I wanted to watch after this.
Cool. That's all the questions from the Q&A. Again, all of our audience members can feel free to continue asking questions. But there was one in the chat that says, if I can find it, yes, since students at these young ages, and no doubt some older people, are inquiring, what do you do to make sure that gender isn't simply typed into pigeonholes and becomes a label, since they're still growing up? So I guess sort of speaking to how you teach gender fluidity to children.
Okay, hang on. Let's just clip it. Let's just start clipping it now. They're talking about teaching gender fluidity to kids. Yeah, we're just gonna clip this because we're just gonna assume that it's something that we need to clip. I have no idea what they're gonna say, but you know.
Asking questions. But there was one in the chat that says, if I can find it, yes, since students at these young ages, and no doubt some older people, are inquiring, what do you do to make sure that gender isn't simply typed into pigeonholes and becomes a label, since they're still growing up? So I guess sort of speaking to how you teach gender fluidity to children.
I mean, they are the best teachers of this themselves. Like I don't need to teach them anything about this. If anything, I need to like help uncover some teaching that they may have experienced, like through watching TV or through what other adults may have said or done. But in terms of especially gender expression, like kids are the experts in that themselves. I mean, ask particularly like for cis girls, but like I think it's becoming more and more common to hopefully, and more accepting of a place for cis boys to play with gender, because that's is what it is. I mean, that's how we figure out who we are, is by playing, right? And that kids play best. And I think by having opportunities for kids to explore who they are, whether it's writing or art, or talking to peers or talking to small groups, they will do that much better than I ever will.
Absolutely. I'll put up the genderbread person and they'll look at me like this is so outdated. They're like, I've learned this in 4th grade. So I think it's totally to the point. It's more useful for the adults in the room and the admin team compared to the students, actually.
Which makes it doubly important for that group to understand, right? It's not that we're trying to teach everyone, we're trying to bring the knowledge that our kids already have to the people that are molding and helping them grow and teaching them, right? And so it's kind of a necessary impetus more than a gay agenda.
All right, I'm just going to ask this.
To the genderbread person in the chat in case.
The genderbread person is like the gender unicorn, except it's not a unicorn, it's a gingerbread person. If you've never seen it before. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This is my opinion. I'm not making any accusations. I don't know Greg. Greg is the cis white man on the top. Is anyone else getting creepy vibes? Is anyone else getting creepy vibes? It's just an instinct. I'm sure he's a wonderful, law-abiding, would never do anything with anyone underage person. I'm sure that all of that is true. I'm just saying that I'm getting really creepy vibes. I don't know what to attribute that to, but that's just me. Probably just making it up. Probably has nothing to do with anything. But I see a lot of you in the chat saying yes, that you agree. Mm-hmm.
Anyone would like to see. I think that is all of the questions that folks have submitted. Again, if any of you have other questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. But as you do that, I guess, to our panelists, do you have any final ideas or pieces of wisdom that you'd like to share?
I do, but I'm looking for it. I was a faculty advisor for a queer straight alliance, and the K-8 that I worked in, it was a middle school queer straight alliance, and we had someone from a local youth resource center, sexual minority youth resource center, come and talk to us about the spectrums of gender and sexual orientation.
God fucking damn it.
And,
God fucking damn it. Why do I have to clip everything? Everything. I was an advisor for a queer sexual alliance for K through 8th grade. Nothing going on there, that's for sure. All right, clipping.
I do, but I'm looking for it. I was a faculty advisor for a queer straight alliance, and the K-8 that I worked in, it was a middle school queer straight alliance, and we had someone from a local youth resource center, sexual minority youth resource center, come and talk to us about the spectrums of gender and sexual orientation, and using Gumby as like I don't know, a visual image of like how it is fluid and how it depends. And I think that was really helpful for me. And I also heard like a lot of echoes from the middle schoolers being like, oh yeah, like this really shows in a way that I understand how this is fluid, and how I don't have to pigeonhole who I am today and set that for the rest of my life, and that it changes, and that's part of being human.
Fucking Gumby? Nothing is sacred. Nothing is sacred anymore with these people. By the way, guys, GSA is not Girl Scouts of America. GSA used to stand for Gay Straight Alliance back in the day. Today, mostly, GSA stands for Gender Sexuality Alliance. And as Greg told us, the white male, earlier in the presentation, the Gay Straight Alliance at his school is the factory for creating the social justice warriors.
I would just kind of circle back and reiterate the importance of affinity spaces at your institution. I hope everyone knows what an affinity space is in terms with the participants,
segregation,
right? But in that you have a space that's where people who identify as LGBTQ queer folks can come, and only they can come to share their experiences with a faculty advisor who is also queer. That has been the most fulfilling thing I think I've ever done as an educator. Meeting with kids on Friday mornings for like 45 minutes. Usually we don't even talk about being queer. We just talk about life and Netflix, but not having to explain yourself. I don't know. It's an invaluable resource. And I think it does really change kids' lives. So seeing if your administration will allow you to carve out that space. I just think it's so important. I can't emphasize how important it is.
I'm sure those Friday meetings with you were life-changing for those kids.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And it reminds me of like all of the harmful desegregation, like busing experiences that we had and trying to separate people who had similar identities, separate Black folks, who had similar identities, and to like disperse them, when really like people want to be with people that they can relate to, and that
and we can only relate to people based on who they want to sleep with. That's the only way that we can relate to people according to these people.
I think affinity groups, no matter what the age, whether it's elementary school, middle school, high school, or college, or even after college, I'm in affinity groups now, and I'm really grateful that I am.
I would just say listen to your students, get their feedback and their input for sure, and just be mindful of how you show up to them every day. And check your policies, be aware of your bathroom policies, your athletic policies, and just, as always, be mindful.
One last point that I would like to make is about making mistakes with pronouns. And I just wanted to say, like, we all make mistakes with pronouns. I do it all the time. And modeling that it's a simple oops, or like, oh, I messed up, I'm sorry, I'm going to practice getting it right now, instead of apologizing and trying to get the affirmation from whoever the person is that you made the mistake about, because it's not that person's job to make you feel better that you made the mistake. So getting good at making mistakes and then moving on and trying better next time is really important.
Sorry, last thing. Also, Carson, you made me realize there's an easy way to queer your classroom. On the first day of school, say your name and your pronouns. I mean, that immediately queers your classroom.
I just wanted to jump in. Y'all are amazing and inspiring and make me want to be a teacher, but not. But there's a couple of things. Carson talking about like getting comfortable with pronouns. If you are someone who cares to get people's pronouns right, practice on your own before you run into someone who uses ze/her pronouns or they them pronouns. Use non-standard pronouns for your pets and your plants.
No.
In private, where nobody's feelings are going to get hurt.
Shan't.
And if you misgender your plant, it will be fine. And you just keep practicing until
Are
you get it
you
right.
saying that plants are more resilient than people?
The question about policies at the district level. So E, if you will drop the link for Stories and Numbers. The Stories and Numbers Collaborative did a bunch of research about what is most important for making classrooms safe for all students. And one of the biggest things is having comprehensive and inclusive anti-harassment and anti-bullying policies. So this is from 2 years ago. Most districts in Texas at least have anti-discrimination and anti-bullying policies that at least cover sexual orientation. There are some that also cover gender, but not necessarily gender expression and gender identity. And so it depends on how your policies are written. But most districts have some kind of policy like that. And so if your district has that kind of umbrella policy, you can use that to build on and add pressure, and especially if you have parents on your side. That was, and then there was something else, but I don't remember what it was.
All right, is that all for this presentation?
Oh, I remember. If you're in Texas and you have a GSA and you have questions about it, or you want to start a GSA in your school, reach out to me. That's what I do.
Oh, good to know, Frederick. Thank you. I'm reasonably positive that Frederick shaved their head and goes by a different name now, by the way. I'm not positive, but I'm like 50% positive.
There are a bunch of links in the chat now.
All right.
If you also
all right, guys, that seems to be the end of that presentation, but stick around. We're not done yet. We got a whole list of these things we got to watch, and one of them's only like 37 minutes long, and I really want to watch it. And so we're going to watch one more because there is a whole playlist of this bullshit. And the next one I want to watch, guys, just so if you came late, we are watching right now webinars that an organization called Out Youth in Austin, Texas has had on YouTube for at least a couple of years. And the reason that we're watching these webinars is because Out Youth is partnered directly on their website with the Austin Independent School District. So the organization that we're watching right now is doing work in the Austin Independent School District in Texas right now. It's on their website. They are listed as a partner. We found them doing several different things on their website the other day. And so we're just trying to, get a sense of it. And so the next one I want to watch, and this is going to be the last one for today, but it's only 37 minutes long. The next one I want to watch is called, this is their massive education playlist, by the way. They've got these are all webinars related to education. And this one is called QT BIPOC, which I'm going to guess is queer, trans, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color, plus QT BIPOC plus youth. Our existence is resistance. And it says, the question is, how do we create spaces for QT BIPOC plus students to feel celebrated, needed, and heard? From my experience as a student leader and community member, I will go in depth on the importance of amplifying the voices of youth to claim their space, constructing a table to bring youth and their peers to the table, blah, 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 blah. This is about as woke can be, and I want to watch it. And this has been on the internet since August 4th, 2020, so over 2 years, 2 years and 2 months. It has 23 views. And the reason I bring that up, and I said this earlier, but just in case anyone new has joined, I am absolutely convinced that all that we need to know about what the woke left and the progressives are doing in schools is on the internet right now, right in front of us. The problem is that no one is watching it. Everything we need to know is public on the internet right now, but no one is taking the time to watch the content and shift through the content because the journalists are too busy fucking around on Twitter and obsessing over nonsense and putting together propaganda to actually do journalism. And so we're taking some time out of our day to do the journalism that journalists refuse to do. We're going to watch this presentation. We're going to watch it from start to finish. If you're ready to go, please mount that like button for me. And just so you know, I do this. So this is like a midweek hump day happy hour. But I do a regular happy hour stream on my second channel, youtube.com/activelyunwoke. And we do those on Fridays at 5 p.m. I may have to move it a little bit earlier this week. I'm going to tell you more about that because I have a thing I need to go to on Friday night. But I will work that out. But make sure you are subscribed not only to my main channel, which is what you're watching on now, but also to my second channel, youtube.com/activelyunwoke. And for those of you watching on Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, please make sure you're subscribed on those platforms as well. All right, guys, let's get this party started.
I'm E. I use they, them pronouns. I am the founder of Queering Education. I'm so excited to have you all with us today. And I'm going to turn it over to Grant to introduce himself and talk about what he's going to tell us today.
Thank you guys so much for having me here today. My name is Grant E. Lovelace. I am here today to talk about how to empower voices for LGBTQ IA2 plus youth in the Austin community. And so I am just excited.
Awesome. Yeah, so if you're ready, I guess you can go ahead and jump right into your presentation. And we'll be here to moderate the chat and everything. So all of you who are watching, feel free to drop questions in either the Q&A or the chat, and we'll make sure those get answered at the end of this presentation.
So this session today is called Our Existence is Resistance. It's our time and we are claiming our space. So today we'll be looking over intersectionality, equity and inclusion, how to utilize social media to create the impact that is needed to ensure that we are creating safe spaces for LGBTQ youth of color to feel celebrated, needed, and heard. So who am I? My name is Grant E. Lovelace. I am an Afro-queer, non-binary student, youth advocate, and social entrepreneur here in the beautiful city of Austin. And I have been doing work within community activism and social entrepreneurship for 3 years now. I started all the way back in high school when I created an organization
I'm
to
going to turn the
address the
volume up a little
needs
bit,
and
guys.
issues for LGBTQ students that were being bullied and harassed. And so through that, I just started doing a lot of different work within the nonprofit sector and being involved in my community. And then it just propelled when I went to college at Austin Community College. I'm currently transferring over to Texas State University as a junior to dual major in psychology and mass communication.
Oh,
So
good.
that's me. And so just to jump right into it, what is intersectionality? So as you can see to your right, it has a definition of what intersectionality is, which is the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. And so I would urge you all to definitely take a read at Kimberly Crenshaw's 1989 essay entitled Mapping the Margins, Intersectionality, Identity, Politics, and Violence Against Women of Color, as she coined the term, and the essay is a beautiful one as she talks about what it means to be a Afro-queer feminist. So, for me, using me as an example, intersectionality is used to discuss how complex humans really are, to look at how each of our identities, whether it's race, religion, class, gender, or sexuality, and how those different identities all come into one, and how from those different components to our identity are different experiences that we go through. And so through these experiences, they can either come from, or we can confront or discuss or unpack racism, homophobia, transphobia, colorism, ethocentrism, and various other isms. So using me as an example, I'm a Christian, Afro-Caribbean, pansexual, non-binary, middle-class person in this beautiful world that we live in. So how does this attribute to who I am today? Well, using the concept of intersectionality, we utilize these different components of my identity or from your identity to figure out how they contribute to the way we live, to the experiences that we confront, and to um, how do we contribute back to society with these different intersections. And also discussing how we can become more comfortable when discussing our intersectional identities. So I would definitely urge everyone just to do like a little brain dump and just look into how intersectionality can apply to your life, and looking at the different components of your identity and seeing how they have contributed or what experiences you have faced with those different components, and if they do in fact intersect. Next, I want to, so for the rest of the slide, where it's going to be more of a conversation between I and you all. Basically, we'll just be talking about equity and inclusion and various other things. So for me, I would love to hear about what you all define equity and inclusion as, whether it is in your communities, at homes, in schools, in your workspaces. How have you yourself seen equity, inclusion, or identified it? Or how would you define equity and inclusion? And so for me, um, I've I've identified within my 3 years of work that inclusion is based on power, voice, and organizational structure. And equity is equatable to results, whether it's policy, practice, or the position that I or any other of my colleagues, friends, or you all take in the world. And what is confusing about equity is that it can always be confused with equality. So
well, I would definitely want to hear him distinguish equity from equality in a second. But Jessica's asking a question in the chat. How can you be gay and non-binary? Don't you have to associate as a man to like other men and refer to yourself as gay? I'm seriously asking. Jessica, this is a great question. And in fact, I found probably about a month ago on the Madison, Wisconsin school district, they had a whole explainer about non-binary lesbians. And I was really confused about this. Like, how can you be a lesbian and non-binary at the same time? But no, they swear this is a real thing. You can be a non-binary lesbian, which in fact means, by the way, it means that there is the potential that two people who were born men with penises, assigned male at birth, if you will, could both identify as non-binary while dating each other and also identify as lesbian for dating each other, and then they become non-binary lesbians even though they don't have the equipment of a traditional lesbian. Because if they identify as non-binary, what is, and that's just like accepted, they aren't male. It's all very confusing. It is very confusing. You are not alone. You are among friends. We welcome you here. Naruto, did you see the article I DM'd you on Twitter about the Cornell professor who denounced CRT, that it's destroying truth? I have not, because I have not been checking Twitter, or at least my DMs on Twitter, for a little while now, but I promise you I will take a look at that as soon as I can, and thank you for the super chat. I really appreciate it.
To briefly go over it, equality is looking at, is giving the same opportunities or resources to anyone, no matter the individual needs. Whereas with equity, we assess the individual needs and distribute resources and opportunities based on said needs. And the reason why equity is very important, as well as inclusion, is because it does give the breathing room for more opportunity, ideas, perspectives, insights, and voices to be amplified, uplifted, and heard. Because too often do we see nonprofit boards or state, city, nationwide commission boards and task forces exclude different people of color, youth, trans, and LGBTQ people from having a seat at the table. And so when we talk about equity, it comes in a question about how do we identify if an organization or a business is equitable or inclusive. And of course, I would always say that the first way to identify that is by looking at their mission and values, by looking at their team members. For example,
wait, do you guys not hear the sound? I can hear the sound. It sounds fine to me. Are you guys not hearing the sound of this? It is a little quiet. I've got the sound cranked up, though. Okay, great. Thank you.
I just joined Austin Young Chamber.
I'm really loud.
While talking to the president at Austin Young Chamber, she emphasized the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion, as the majority of the chairs or the people that are leading some of their initiatives and programs there are
So, okay, hang on. Am I lower now than I was before? Am I lower now? Am I lower now than I was before? Because here's the deal. I have a volume enhancer on my Chrome that I thought was enhancing the volume of the presentation, but might not be enhancing the volume. Now okay. So the volume extension on my Chrome that I thought was making the the presentation louder was in fact making me louder. See, it sounds the same to me. It doesn't sound like the presentation to me sounds louder when I use the volume thing, but I think it's enhancing my mic. So I'll turn that down. I will turn the volume and not use this plugin anymore. I thought I was being helpful. Okay, I've turned the volume thing all the way down in Chrome. I can turn my volume down more, and that way you guys can turn your volume up, and I won't be as loud. No, this is good information. I need to know how my own technology works.
Are non-people of color, and also not affiliated or an ally of the LGBTQ community. So it's
okay, I see. So
bring that.
Now I can't hear him at all. Oh no, now I can't hear him at all. Okay, hang on.
That structure of equity and inclusion to the table. We could bring equity and inclusion to the table by
I need to rewind. I need to rewind. I don't know how loud I am. I need to rewind.
We talk about equity. It comes in the question about how do we identify if an organization or a business is equitable or inclusive? And of course, I would always say that the first way to identify that is by looking at their mission and values, by looking at their team members. For example, I just joined Austin Young Chamber. And while talking to the president at Austin Young Chamber, she emphasized the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion, as the majority of the chairs or the people that are leading some of their initiatives and programs there are non-people of color, and also not affiliated or an ally of the LGBTQ community. So it's a question of how can we bring that structure of equity and inclusion to the table. We could bring equity and inclusion to the table by one, as I said before, identifying those needs. If we see that the boards or the task forces or the commissions do not have people of color,
I don't know what ASMR is. Tell me what ASMR is. I have no idea.
LGBTQ or racialized communities. We then bring that need to the people that are part of the organization, whether they're the board members, whether they are on the ground working, and discussing those needs and how we can bring those needs into the organization and implement structures of equity and inclusion.
What the fuck is ASMR?
And then
I don't know what that is.
Following up and ensuring that those structures stay in place, or creating a program or an accelerator to ensure that those things are in place. Whether it is by being a part or running for a board member seat or running for a city council seat, just ensuring that there is fair representation in your district, in your city, in your community,
in your schools, for your service,
in your neighborhoods, to make sure that everyone is getting the same opportunities and resources. Following up is the importance of safe spaces for LGBTQIA2+ youth. In high school, I had, before I even thought of creating an organization for LGBTQ youth at my high school, within my junior year, I began to see a counselor, not a counselor, but funny thing. Out Youth had a coach or a guidance counselor implemented at the school.
Okay, I'm bringing the volume down. All right, I'm bringing the volume down because I have something I want to say. All right, this has nothing to do with the presentation we're watching, although he's about to tell us what he did to build a student group in his school, which I think is going to be interesting. But Casmar says, "Last house on the left is on my TV, and you whispering is freaky." Is it the original Last House on the Left, or is it the remake of Last House on the Left? Last House on the Left is a fucked up movie. Whether you're watching the original or the remake, although of course we always watch the original is always best. This is like, if you have never seen Last House on the Left, you have to watch it in the month of October. It is a fucked up movie. And the original, like, Oh, it's the remake? No. Kazmar, you have to watch the original, because the original was like in that golden time of horror movie, like in the late 70s, early 80s, and it's so much worse. It is so much worse than the remake. Remake is still fucked up. Don't get me wrong. Like, the remake is worth watching, but the original, man, there are few better horror movies ever made in terms of like things that will screw with you psychologically for like the rest of your life, which I think is what a good horror movie is. If it makes you feel something psychologically, kind of like watching this woke training bullshit. Like Last House on the Left, man. That is a messed up movie. And the original was made in the time before things were edited to placate people's fragile sensibilities. You know, I don't mind Rosemary's Baby. I have watched Rosemary's Baby on several occasions. I think that there is a lot of I think Rosemary's Baby is a quality movie, but it is fundamentally different than Last House on the Left. These are two completely different genres of horror. Two completely different things. Rosemary's Baby is a movie you have to sit with. You have to watch it multiple times because there's just a lot of like nuance and like little things that you might like notice on like the fourth time you watch it that you don't notice the first or second time you watch it. It's a brilliant, brilliant movie, brilliantly acted. I thought it was really wonderful. But Last House on the Left is a completely different movie. Yeah, Bill. I liked Rosemary's Baby. I thought it was a good movie. I did. I've seen it many times. I own it. I think it's great. But no, Last House on the Left, man. I want to watch that now. Thank you for reminding me of that movie. I need to watch that in the month of October. Can we crowdfund a horror movie that features a cult and a wood chipper? Well, why not? Stevie, that would be a wonderful project. That would be a wonderful project. Oh, man. No, Zacho, I get it. I totally get it. I just think like it. Rosemary's Baby took me a couple of viewings before I really like warmed up to it. So I totally get where you're at. But I've seen it probably 15 times now, and I really do like it now. But I agree with you. Like at first I was like, what? No, but Stevie, the libertarians could make a hell of a script. And if we can find someone that would actually that knows how to make a movie, that'd be a great movie, man. That'd be a great movie.
That would hold different healing circles and conversations with LGBTQ students at LGBTQ
okay, I'm whispering again now.
School.
I'm whispering.
Within those conversations and having my one-on-one with the counselor, I can say that for me, that was the safe space I needed to grow and develop the skills that I needed to, basically start that organization and group at my school. And the safe spaces are, of course, important because you need to give youth a place to speak, to have their voices and experiences heard. Because too often are there a lack of safe spaces or a lack thereof of spaces where youth can, of course, feel welcome, loved, heard, and celebrated. And so creating the organization at my high school, at first I identified the need, of course, and I went to the principal. Like, really, I was bold. Okay, I walked up to the principal's office and knocked on the door. No appointment.
Don't get embarrassed. It's no big deal.
And
you're among friends.
I talked to the principal. I said, this is an issue that we are having at the school. And of course, my high school always promoted No Place for Hate. I believe it was a program. And from this
No Place for Hate is an indoctrination program run by the ADL.
We really can't assess the needs of these students. We're focusing on other things, but we can definitely delve into this in the future. So basically, it was a no. And so what I did from there, I found a sponsor to I would call it oversee the organization. And from that, I gathered at least 10 to 20 students to be a part of the organization.
Drink the
And
Kool-Aid.
then sadly, I had to leave my senior year, and I had to leave because I graduated. And it sadly got dissolved. But from the work that we did from my junior and senior year, we were the first LGBTQ group in the Manor district. We were in yearbooks, and we created the change that we wanted to see by having workshops and events about what it meant to be an ally, what it means to be LGBTQU in such a country, in a country setting. And also the workshops help identify and kind of shape the way that Manor, the city of Manor, approaches and addresses the needs of youth when it does come to being LGBTQ or a person of color, and how they should attend to those needs. Now, talking about creating a seat at the table, that's just a great leeway into this. Creating a seat at the table is all about those 3 steps: identifying the need, approaching a person about the need or the group about the need, and then, of course, making.
Okay, I'm feeling the need to like cut it here, just because this webinar is really not what I thought it was going to be. So kudos to everyone earlier in the stream who voted that we watch the Queerness and the Queering Your Classroom presentation, because that was much more about what I thought it was going to be. This presentation is just kind of like, this guy's trying to be an influencer. He's trying to like present himself. He's like worked in this space, and he's like, this is what I would do. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. I don't necessarily think that that's bad, but this is not like, when I'm watching presentations, what I'm really looking for is I want teachers and I want students, and this is not giving me that. And so I'm not mad at it. It's fine. I guess it's not doing anyone any harm. It's only had 23 views on the internet. We're not going to give it any more today, because I just don't feel like we're getting anywhere. And there's nothing really that's striking me in this presentation as something that I need to be concerned about, which is actually a good thing. So guys, I think I'm going to wrap the stream up for today. I'm going to go spend some time with Victor. I'm going to finish my shawl. I just need to bind off the rest of my shawl. You guys want to see my shawl that I'm working on? Because the mystery knit along starts tomorrow. This is the West Knits annual mystery knit along. And I have to finish my shawl, because I have to finish binding off the shawl because I need these needles to start the new shawl tomorrow. A mystery knit along is basically when you get you don't know what you're knitting. You know you're knitting a shawl, and you get parameters about like what type of yarn you need to buy. Do you guys want to see the yarn I have for mystery knit along? I have to go wind it. Hang on, let me show you the yarn I have. This is just for fun. Hang on. It's in a box. Hang on, I can't hear anything. Oh no, I can't hear anything. Okay, so basically for a mystery knit along, you get told, here is the amount of yarn you need to buy, and you get some parameters, and every week they release a new clue. And you knit the clue, but you don't know what the shawl is going to look like in its full form, and it goes on for the entire month. And so in my box here, you get a bag, and it has some goodies in it. But this is my color palette. I wanted to go super, super graphical, and I wanted black and white with a pop of hot pink. And I think I've never knit a black and white shawl before. I really wanted something like super, super graphic, like kind of punk rock. And the yarn is beautiful. The yarn is Westful, which is Stephen West's brand of yarn. And Stephen West is my favorite knitting designer. It's actually kind of funny. So fun fact, Stephen West is probably the most well-known knitting designer in the world. Like most of the shawls I've knitted are West knit shawls, and just because he does really fun patterns, he's a fun designer. His business partner's a little bit woke, but they were never the knitters that were like attacking people. They do inclusivity and that sort of thing, and he's very, very gay. So like you know, like they're more like, they are personally woke, but they've never actually pushed that agenda onto anyone, which I always appreciated. But fun fact, right after my Trump rally article went viral, Stephen West's mother reached out to me. His mother reached out to me. I have his mother's cell phone number, and was like, I love what you're doing. My son just wanted to knit and all this stuff, and he just wants to be left alone to knit. And so I really do appreciate him. But I've got his yarn, which is West Wool, which I really actually do like West Wool quite a bit. Yes, there are famous knitters in the knitting world. So I got to go wind my yarn, because like you can't knit with it in the form that it's in now. You got to wind it into a ball. And I've got 5 skeins I got to wind. But this is the shawl that I'm finishing up. Hang on. This is a West knit shawl. It's called Stripified. So yeah, this is like no joke. Over 4,000 people are participating in the Mystery Yarn Along. The Mystery Yarn Along is a big fucking deal, okay? The Mystery Yarn Along is a big deal. And that starts tomorrow, and we're very excited about it. Judy's knitting in the Mystery Yarn Along as well. If anyone else, I'm gonna be putting this shawl up for sale as a part of my fundraiser. So if anyone likes this shawl and wants this shawl, I think I'm gonna price this at $500, and that will actually go towards my Schools Exposed program that I'm doing the Indiegogo campaign for. If you're not familiar with my Schools Exposed program, you can search for it on Indiegogo. And there you go. And I'm raising money to create an online training program to help parents learn what the schools are doing using publicly available information. And you can actually get as perks some of my hand knit shawls right now. There are hand knit shawls that are available on the fundraiser. And these are all things that I've hand knit. These are things from my private collection. And you can pick those up as a part of the fundraiser, and all of the funds and the donations do go to support the creation of this program and the marketing of this program, because I am deadly serious. I want to get 10,000 parents through this program within the next couple of years. In order to do that, I need to reach parents, and so I'm looking for a marketing budget, folks. I really am. I'm looking for advertising and flyers and circulars, not so much online, but I'm looking for like old school marketing tactics. So I'm selling some of my shawls as a part of this not really selling, more so gifting. We're going to call it gifting. I don't like selling my shawls. I think that selling my shawls makes knitting work. But you'll be able to find this shawl once I get it done and blocked and photographed on the fundraiser for Schools Exposed. So if you like it or think it'd be a good gift for someone, Christmas is coming up, you're going to be able to get it as part of the Schools Exposed program. All right, guys, I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. probably with another stream. And I guess that's all I have for right now. Map that like button on your way out the door, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for hanging out with me. Bye, guys.